Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to the Don't Worry, Nobody's Listening podcast. This is the Reboot. I don't know if you've noticed, but I haven't released an episode in something like 5 or 6 weeks because I've been going through some shit and haven't felt like recording. So I took a little break, and now I'm back. And as I told you in the last couple episodes I did record before my break, I'm going to have a guest with me today. And my guest is...
Todd.
Oh, hey, Todd, way to be so enthusiastic as we start the reboot. It's a reboot. Haven't you been watching Comedy Central? You're supposed to be excited about a reboot.
Not a Tosh Pono fan.
Oh, you're crazy if you're not a Tosh fan. But you're not a fan of good comedy anyway, so we'll save that for later. We don't want to dispel people against you anyways. But as always, I'm your host, Jason Benicki Critchlow, and you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat at JASONBANICKI. You can find the podcast on Facebook at Don't Worry, Nobody's Listening Podcast. And please subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Google Play Music, use the Podbean app, share it with your friends, help us grow our audience. You know, I wouldn't mind making some money doing this eventually. Maybe I'll even start a Patreon so the 12 people who listen to every episode can
I was going to say, aren't you going to hurt 12 people's feelings there, buddy, with the name of your podcast?
No, not really worried about that. They seem to listen anyways. And more importantly, anytime you can steal one of the greatest lines from one of the greatest movies ever in Major League, I'm taking it and running with it. So, like I said, I'm back after a little break. This one's going to skew a little heavy on sports because, of course, how can you forget this, not start with the Twitter burner accounts where Brian Colangelo had the 76ers tell him, in the immortal words of the kid Miro today, suck my dick from the back. Just straight up get your ass a new job because you can't control your wife. Your wife out here having to get fake burner accounts to stick up for you because you a man-child, and then your dad's running around behind your back telling every team around the league that if the 76ers fire you, that he's going to do everything he can to make their relationship with all 29 other teams impossible to deal with. That's who you are as a man. That's who you are. Your wife's running fake burner accounts to stand up for you, talking mad shit about your players, and your dad's having to go around and try and keep your job. Sorry, I'm glad the 76ers told you, suck my dick from the back and get a new job. I know you technically resigned, but that's just not what really happened. They just said, peace out, fool.
Technically, they split, mutually parted ways.
No, he technically resigned.
It was mutually parted ways officially, they said.
Who cares? Again, like I said, they told him, suck my dick from the back. That's what they did. They're like, come on, fool. Seriously. The minute this broke, the minute the Ringer article came out that said, hey, we think these 5 accounts are burner accounts linked to Brian Colangelo in some way, you were screwed because the minute they called the 76ers to confirm 2, the other 3 went private right away, which told everybody in the world that these were what they thought they were. And by the way, if you guys follow me on Twitter right now at JASONBANICKI, you might see that I've renamed the Twitter account, not Brian Colangelo's burner account. And even better yet, you might go back to the day this broke, and you'll see my tweet. And I tweeted out to Jim Rome, and I tweeted it out to Mike Golick, who read it on the air, by the way. I was listening to ESPN radio. I was actually watching it. And he read it, and he said, this tweet comes from not Brian Colangelo's burner account. And it says, and now I've got to find it again because I don't want to misquote it because it was that good of a tweet that it got.
Senior or junior?
Senior.
Okay.
Real Mike Golick. There's only one Mike Golick.
Well, they both got their own TV shows now, so you got to give the other one credit somewhat because he's got his own ESPN show.
Fair enough. But I got to go back a week on my Twitter. That'll take me forever. You can fill some air, Todd. You don't need me to fill all of it. Oh, here we go. And by the way, like I said, this got read on ESPN radio. It wasn't Brian Colangelo. There was a second tweeter on the grassy knoll. By the way, I was right. I was 100% right before even the rest of the internet had broke it that it was his wife.
Hold on. What'd Trey say?
I don't
Did Trey
remember.
laugh? Oh.
I didn't pay that close. I was just like, wait, what? They're reading my tweet on the air? I was just looking for a favorite or a retweet, but I got read on ESPN. So, suckers, I had like 15 seconds of not even internet famous. Don't worry. Not going to my head. But seriously, when this happened, the minute it broke and the minute those accounts went silent, like there was zero way for Brian Colangelo to keep his job.
So what you're saying, his wife should have kept tweeting shit out?
No, because it wouldn't have helped.
So he was just screwed.
He was screwed because she did it.
Yeah.
Because he was telling her shit that he shouldn't have because he was telling her, private club business, like players failing physicals that she then tweeted out trying to defend her husband's ineptitude. Like, sorry. You took over the process and you got to bear the fruits of the process. And
Bring back Hinkie.
Not going to happen.
They didn't deny it. They said they will talk to him.
Yeah, for about 2 seconds, and he's not coming back. He's already like, you wasted one of my first-round draft picks for no goddamn reason. Like, you've crippled me asset-wise. I mean, I might have 900 second-round picks and, like, 16 more first-round picks, but that one was crucial that you gave away. It's top 1 protected this year. That's it for the Kings. Like, or next year, I guess, technically now, because the Kings got to keep their this year's pick.
No.
Because it was top 3 protected this year, or top 10. Top 3, or like it was 7
if you're
to
talking
10.
to Jeff, you're missing the biggest scoop this year. I believe this is the last year the Celtics have a Brooklyn pick.
It is the last Brooklyn pick that they technically would have had. They don't have anymore. They traded it to Cleveland, so. But yes.
Brooklyn has a pick next year. At this point in time.
Unless they trade it. It is Brooklyn. I mean, there's always a chance.
Is Paul Pierce available to be traded again?
I think Sean Marks is a little better than the GM they had at the time. Also, I think the owner has kind of set a different directive of, I'm not going to spend $200 million to eke into the playoffs at the 6th seed anymore. But yeah, that will go down as a all-time terrible trade. And I get it. Even the Celtics, have said, and Danny Ainge has said, like, nobody expected this trade to turn out the way it did. You traded for 2 Hall of Fame caliber players. Even if they were at the end of their career, you just had an owner who was setting this expectation. I'm going to use my assets and acquire players and try and stay competitive. And then as these convicts started conveying, the owner decided to not spend the money. And all of a sudden the team got terrible fast. And it was like, so picks that probably should have been even on the low end side of 15 to 20 maybe, where you're just squeaking into the playoffs, suddenly turned into number 1 overall, top 10 pick, number 5 overall, number 3 overall, number 3 overall. Like it just turned into this ridiculous situation. And then Brian Colangelo expanded on this ridiculousness from trading up from 3 to 1 from a guy who likely would have fallen to 3 anyways. Or even better, they would have probably had a better fit fall to them at 3 if for some reason the Celtics decided to take.
But you had to make sure you got your guy that wasn't going to play this year. That's the only sure way that the 76ers knew they got the right guy.
Well, but I don't blame them for him not playing this year. That's here or there. That's basically the 3 out of the last 4 first-round picks for the Sixers have missed 1 year before they, took a red shirt on their rookie year. Although technically Fultz doesn't count because he played some. But, again, in that vein, yeah, that's nothing. But you have to know the draft board well enough and know who's likely to take who before you give up an additional first-round pick to move from 3 to 1. Like, and say, is there that big of a difference to move up from 3, say Jason Tatum still went 3rd, to Markelle Fultz to give up a top 1 protected Kings pick when the Kings are not going to be any good?
Right.
Like, that's the thing. It's like, it's going to take a miracle for that to not look terrible next year. I mean, even let's say the Kings get a little bit better and maybe they finish, it's 8th or 10th pick, still looks really bad. As you gave up a number 3 and a number 10 to go up to number 1 for a guy who's not appreciably better than the guy who went drafted at 3rd.
He's got to either win the Rookie of the Year or MVP next year, and then that your statement becomes false then. If he wins the MVP,
he can't win Rookie of the Year. Again, he played games this year. He won't. Once you play, you lose your rookie status. And he played, so he lost his rookie status.
Well, he's got to win the MVP too.
I wouldn't say he has to win the MVP, but again, Jason Tatum's already played well enough and was the leading man on a team that went 7 games in the Eastern Conference Finals. And you're not going to leapfrog him by being MVP, and more importantly, he's not going to be MVP next year. Not unless he just has a season that's never been seen, and it's not going to happen. So, I mean, I get that a wife or a husband always wants to stick up for their significant other. She went way too far. And she made it way too obvious when all 3 of the burner accounts followed basically the same people and attacked the same people. And, like, AI picked it up right away. Artificial intelligence is how this was figured out. Because they used the same words and they followed the same accounts and they tweeted the same things.
So you're still buying that it was her actually doing tweeting. I'm not saying there weren't her accounts, but you think it was her tweeting.
It was, because I'm almost certain of it, because there were actually times, like, somebody went back and did, like, deep analysis after the article first broke, and one of the tweets was timed out right as Brian Colangelo was giving a press conference in the playoffs at the podium. So, like, it was very obvious that it clearly wasn't him.
Okay.
But it was somebody who knew. I mean, and the Sixers had said kind of all along that no matter what happened, they were viewing it, if it was him or a family member or a close associate, as one and the same. And I think they really wanted to fire him earlier, but Jerry Colangelo kept threatening everybody and their mother about burning them to the ground, and they kind of chickened out, and they shouldn't have anyways. They should have told Jerry Colangelo the same thing. Suck my dick from the back. Greatest phrase ever, by the way. If you don't know who Jesus and Miro is, first off, do yourself a favor. Get in a wormhole of YouTube videos and just watch them all day long. And then watch them on #1 rated talk show, on late night talk show on Viceland, Jesus and Miro. Shouts out to the Bodega boys. They also have a podcast, but they make enough money on TV. Don't listen to theirs. Listen to mine. Tell your friends to listen to mine. We'll be fine. So yeah, I mean, I think that's interesting. And, of course, Kevin Durant was laughing because now he's not the biggest burner Twitter account story for the year in the NBA, because at least he didn't get fired from a job as a general manager, and also basically didn't ruin his entire rest of his career. Colangelo's done in the NBA.
You sure?
Yeah, he's done. No team will take that chance. Not one time will anybody risk that. And more importantly, no players will play for him.
Can Dad come in?
No.
So Dad's done too?
Dad's technically still somewhat involved with the Sixers.
I thought he was with Team USA, I thought they said.
Well, that's one of the things he's doing, but the NBA essentially put him in place because they got tired of the process. And so, again, the NBA is kind of ultimately to blame for this. That if they would have just let Sam Hinkie do what Sam Hinkie was doing, like, I get it. The other 29 owners were mad because the Sixers weren't selling a lot of tickets and merchandise, and it was hurting the bottom line. But if you're a GM and your job is to build the best quality roster, he was doing it the right way. Like, you don't build a better roster by trying to do what the Bulls are talking about. Well, you have to build a culture, because if you lose too much, you'll never figure out how to win. Bullshit. The Sixers went from god-awful to 52 wins in 1 year. Like, there's this long-held fiction in the NBA that if you build a culture of losing, it becomes self-fulfilling. And it's not. It's just an excuse by bad GMs to get away with being bad GMs and doing dumb shit. Like not trading Robin Lopez, who you have for a year and a half left, who's all he's going to do is help you win games because he's going to make the right basketball plays, but isn't going to help you on your timeline of rebuilding. Like, ultimately, that's the reality. If you're the Bulls, you're rebuilding, and you're not close. You're not.
He helped screw it up.
Chris Dunn, Zach LaVine, and Lauri Markkanen are not core players. Lauri Markkanen, at best, out of his ceiling, is your number 2 scorer. Chris Dunn is your backup point guard, defensive piece, maybe a starter on a really questionable team. And Zach LaVine is the 6th guy.
I like Bobby. Bobby's the 6th guy, too, there.
Bobby is not. Bobby Portis is a 7th or 8th guy. Have you ever seen Bobby Portis play defense? It's awful. It is terrible. It is atrocious. It's downright terrible. It's pathetic. It's garbage. For all the years that the Bulls organization spent downplaying Niko Mirotic's defense and trying to make him seem like he was the bad one and Portis was the good one, analytics at the end of the year bore out that Mirotic is the better defender than Bobby Portis.
Wow.
Bobby Portis is more myth than reality. And again, he put up good numbers on a bad team. You trade him now, well, you got some value because, again, when you get to a better team, he's not going to be a good piece. He's not a long-term building block. He's not that guy. Again, you get these good numbers on bad teams because somebody has to take the shots.
So do they re-sign Nico this year if he's willing to come back? If they trade Bobby, like you say?
Nico's not a free agent. He made the Pelicans pick up his team option as part of his deal to be traded.
You're right. I forgot about that.
Because otherwise, they didn't. If they don't pick up the option, they don't have his bird rights, and then he goes into a very restricted free agent market, and he's not going to make the $12.5 or $13 million that he's going to make this year on that team option.
Okay.
So he made them pick that up before he agreed to be traded. That's part of why that trade took a few extra days, and probably cost the Bulls another win. But again, it's just. I understand why the NBA doesn't want to see teams tank as a league. But again, if you're a GM and if you're an organization, you have to build your team the best way possible. Clear evidence is to be a championship caliber team, you have to have multiple superstars.
Well,
not quality players, multiple superstars in this day and age.
But do you trust the Bulls brass to tank and tank correctly, and even when they tank, to get it right?
No, and that's evidenced by I already have an episode on this podcast feed called #FireGuardPacks. Like, trust me, I have zero faith in this organization whatsoever. I think I clearly advocated, and it's been a while since I recorded that one, clearly advocated for the hiring of Sam Hinkie to run the Bulls then. I clearly advocate for it now, even with the changes they made to the lottery where, like, the top 3 teams all have the same odds of, like, 12.5 or 14%. So I don't know what the math is, but all 3 of the top teams now have the same odds. It's like, yeah, granted, it doesn't encourage necessarily the race to be the worst team, but now still you want to be in that 3 worst, you know.
Wow.
So it's nothing personal, but you have to have multiple superstars to win. The best way to get multiple superstars is to draft or be a team that's right there and get an extra one, or be a free agent destination like LA or Miami. And unfortunately, Chicago is none of those 3 things right now. They don't draft well. They're not a free agent destination. Clearly, they haven't gotten any big name free. The last kind of big name free agent they got was Carlos Boozer, and that was a consolation prize in the summer of LeBron, Wade, and Bosh.
Hey, you gave that credit, huh? I would have went back to Dennis Rodman.
I mean, Carlos Boozer was a big name. I didn't say.
But yeah, I understand. But he was also, like, as you say, the consolation prize. So he wasn't the top 5 biggest names out there.
I'd say he was right around 4 or 5 that summer. I would say he was probably 4 or 5.
Well, you had to go. James, Wade, and Bosh were 1, 2, and 3.
Right. So I mean, he was number 4 or 5 that summer. Right? Okay. He wasn't like way down the pool. I think Amari Stoudemire was that summer too. So I would have put him at probably 5.
Okay.
Although Amari really fell off health-wise after leaving the land of the Magic trainers in Arizona. So, I mean, there was that. But, that's the biggest pool you've got. Not a superstar, by the way. Even if he's a big-name free agent, he's not a superstar. He's not a get-you-over-the-hump piece, clearly, because he didn't get the Bulls over the hump. Correct. Even though they did get the 1 seed the next 2 years in a row with him there. You know, then you had the whole Derrick Rose thing. But, again, he wasn't the guy to get you there. So they're not going to do that. They don't draft well.
Trade. Kawhi Leonard.
The Bulls don't have the pieces for Kawhi Leonard.
2 draft picks and done.
No, not a chance. San Antonio
if he wants out.
San Antonio is not the best franchise in the NBA for a reason. If they're trading him, they're not trading him till January or February, probably. For a couple of reasons. One, they've had players who have wanted to leave before and been able to get them to stay in even less time than they have with Kawhi Leonard. Like last year in February and March, apparently LaMarcus Aldridge was trying to convince the players of Portland to talk to the GM to get the pieces to trade for him back to Portland. Yeah. And between the time that they were talking about it before the trade deadline and time to re-sign, obviously the Spurs smoothed out whatever issue there was because he ended up re-signing 4 more years in San Antonio, even though he would have been a free agent and able to go back to Portland or via sign and trade.
Yeah.
So I think they've got plenty of time to smooth that out and get that fixed with Kawhi. And apparently I was reading on Bleacher Report today that he has now been talking with people in San Antonio. I have a hunch because I think Kawhi's problem is he's got his lead agent passed away or retired. I can't remember. It's been a while. And now his secondary agent has become his primary agent, and he's got an uncle who's been acting as an advisor, and Kawhi, who is a guy who's just never give a damn about money. Like, he's wanted to get his, but never, like, built his life around money. Now has people in his ear that, all these other guys who might not be as good as you are getting super shoe contracts, and Nike only offered you this, and that was just preposterous. You need to go to a bigger market, which isn't true, by the way, because we've seen Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant both, while they were in Oklahoma City, get major shoe contracts. Kawhi Leonard's just not that magnetic personality.
He don't have the personality to get to sell a shoe. I mean, if you like Kawhi Leonard, you go buy his shoe, but you're not going to go out, I need to get the Kawhi Leonard shoe because he's outspoken. He's flamboyant.
He's just not flashy either. He's defensive first. This isn't, a guy who's per se, an offensive juggernaut, and even when he scores more, he's just not this flashy guy who's going to be a great. We're watching the Game 4 of Cavs Warriors, and that was just a terrible call. You could try and call it offensive foul, but he was inside the restricted area. So, see, his foot's on the paint. He's in the restricted area. That's not a foul.
I don't think they're calling a charge. I think they called lowering that shoulder down.
Doesn't matter. If he's in the restricted area, you can make contact with him.
I mean, it's not the contact. I think it's still the shoulder.
In that restricted area, that is the offensive player space. End of discussion, contact-wise. You are allowed to end of discussion, but not to get off point. Yeah, Kawhi's not going anywhere. So, sorry. The Bulls have not. When's the last time you've seen a trade that the Bulls have made and thought, man, they won that? I mean, kind of, sort of Derrick Rose for Brook Lopez, or Robin Lopez, not Brook Lopez. Wrong twin. But again, that they traded a broken down injured player for a guy who just doesn't fit the NBA anymore.
I would agree. I think you'd have to go back trade-wise, Pippen's trade to get in. I don't know if I can't think of any other trade that you just flat out say they won.
The trade that got him Dennis Rodman. I don't remember what they traded for Dennis Rodman to San Antonio, but that was a trade, not a free agent signing. So they won that one.
Or he came back via free agency then because he didn't have.
Yeah, I mean, I think he re-signed. I think it was his last year, but still, either way, that was a trade. Trying to think. Tyson Chandler was technically a trade.
Oh, I know. It's the Eddie Curry trade.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely a win.
I mean,
Eddie Curry for what eventually turned into Joakim Noah, and I can't even remember who the other player. It doesn't even matter. Eddie Curry turned into Joakim Noah, and you didn't have to pay Eddie Curry $75 million. And then the Knicks signed Joakim Noah for $72 million at the end of his career. So, again, the Knicks lose twice in that trade. Sorry, Knicks fans. We got to beat you up a little on here. For people who are from overseas that listen, because, again, I have overseas listeners. I'm not sure how that happens. Hey, it's NBA. What are you going to do? So, yeah, I have zero faith in this Bulls team. Again, this is an organization that traded Jimmy Butler, who was the best player in the trade, for Zach LaVine, who had a torn ACL at the time, Chris Dunn, who was below Kwame Brown level rookie season, and a first-round pick that turned into Lauri Markkanen, and they had to include an extra first-round pick in that trade to make it happen. So you basically traded up from 16 to 7 and picked up
Jimmy Butler
and two bargain basement assets at the time. And again,
which they're now going to pretty much pay LaVine 4 years, and
probably going to have to give Zach LaVine close to a max extension on a guy who proved nothing this year, who shot right around 40% from the field, who averaged like 60 points, who proved that his ceiling is a sixth man, not a lead scorer on a competitive team. You have Chris Dunn, who again article today on Bleacher Report that the Bulls are unhappy with his offseason work ethic because he's already shortcutting his summer program.
Nice.
So this is a guy who hasn't even made it to contract 2 yet. Is already shortcutting. This is the same team that picked up the 4th-year option on Cameron Payne, even though he's showing less than 0 in the league.
Actually, I have a better looking jump shot than he does. It's one of the few people in this world I can say that about.
I wouldn't say it. I mean, once he was finally healthy and played the last 15 games, his shot was okay. But again, he missed 60 fucking games this year. You don't pick up that 4th-year option. They failed.
You know why you pick up the 4th-year option on him? Because you could lose basketball games with him playing.
You failed to trade for Jahlil Okafor when he was available this year. Whether or not he fits in the modern NBA, when you're rebuilding like you are, you have to find a way to trade for that guy. And you probably should have done it before the 76ers turned down his 4th-year option. So you could have picked up his 4th-year option and given yourself an extra look.
You remember what he was traded for?
Trevor Booker?
Okay, I mean, we could have came up with some...
In a second-round pick? Yeah, like, it could have been Justin Holiday in a second-round pick at that point. Or a Jaren Grant in a second-round pick. It wasn't going to take much. They didn't get much for him. It was just, again, steadfast, not understanding how a rebuild process should look and work.
So how do you get rid of the GMs in Chicago? Well, I mean, what do they actually do?
I don't know. I mean, you're talking about, a situation with Jerry Reinsdorf, who's ceded more control over to Michael, but not a ton yet. Okay. And he's still a cheap ass. He ain't paying them to go away. Well, I don't even know if John Paxson's as much of the problem as Garth Foreman is.
But he bought into a rebuild for the White Sox. I mean, he bought in. He's in there. He understands that's what they got to do. But why will he not do it with the Bulls?
Well, again, he's trying to rebuild, but he's just letting the wrong people do it who don't understand it. Because, again, he doesn't mind not spending the money on payroll and pocketing the difference.
Well, I know. He's got to be the cheapest owner out there.
Comiskey was never selling out no matter what it was, or guaranteed rate field, or whatever they call Comiskey Park nowadays.
You're right. Guaranteed rate.
When they had a team they were trying to compete, they weren't selling a ton of tickets. And now that they're rebuilding, they're not selling a ton of tickets. But now he's not paying a ton for payroll. With the Bulls, it's kind of the exact opposite. Whether they're winning or rebuilding, they're selling out. And again, he's not spending money on hundreds of millions of dollars on payroll. Instead, he's saving money. So he's always happy with that outcome. But he just, again, I don't know if, like I said, I don't know if John Paxson's the problem. I think that's why we've seen more of John Paxson than Garth Foreman this year. And it's just the one thing that's hard about this time of year. You don't know what they're going to do in the draft. I just don't trust them because they keep being linked to so many centers, traditional centers, in an era of basketball where the traditional center doesn't mean anything at all. You're about to see a team tonight most likely win their 3rd out of the last 4 NBA Finals who's had 900-year-old Andrew Bogut out there and JaVale McGee as their 2 primary centers in those 3 championships. Like, that's what the NBA center means now. And even when Cleveland won it, Tristan Thompson's a power forward, not a center. Kevin Love's a power forward, not a center.
So, you get the first off pick. Who are you taking?
Me?
Yes, you get the first pick.
I'm taking Luka Doncic. I'm taking the guy who's 19 years old, who's a clear facilitator, who was a EuroLeague MVP, and he won 2 different European League MVPs this year. Of course, the EuroLeague's the much bigger deal. But again, you have a guy who's, in my eyes, more proven, who's been a professional longer, who's got a better jump shot, who knows how to make plays. It's the NBA we play in.
Has he decided he was coming over?
Yeah.
Okay. I knew last time I heard it from him, he was going to make his decision. I just didn't hear the decision.
Oh, there was, I think, for like 2 seconds, a thought that he wouldn't. And, I mean, there's still, I guess, a fraction of a chance that he might not. But that would have to do with him falling way farther than he expects. And then the money just doesn't make sense.
I just thought it was for the Kings. He didn't want to go play in Sacramento, and if Sacramento was going to take him, he was not coming.
Yeah, I don't think Sacramento wants him anyway. I think Sacramento is going to do what Sacramento does and draft another goddamn big guy.
Well, Sacramento hired his coach. Wasn't that the team that has his coach?
Not his coach, a coach from over there.
Okay.
But there's a lot of people who think it'll be a good fit because European coach, European player, and a team that needs somebody who can make plays, from whether he's doing it from a traditional point guard position or a point forward type position. Okay. You know, who knows? But I don't think anybody really cares either. It just gets to be one of those deals where it's just like there's a lot that says they could and should because, again, they don't have a primary playmaker, and they've got drafts recently with Willie Cauley-Stein and Skull Lava and a couple other big guys like that, where it doesn't necessarily make sense to draft another big guy. But this Sacramento Kings didn't do anything that makes sense.
Lottie Vita, like big guys.
Well, and again, Skull and Willie haven't shown enough anyways for me to say, hey, if I think I can get a guy who could be a franchise guy who can step out and shoot threes and protect the rim a little, then, hey, that's who I go get.
Maybe they take Bamba so you don't have to worry about Bamba going to the Bulls.
They could. I think a lot of teams are throwing up a smokescreen on Bamba to try and get somebody ahead of them to take him. Although the Mavericks were sending up a smokescreen on Michael Porter today to try and get somebody to take him ahead of them because they want one of the big guys to fall. Which, understandably so. You've got Dennis Smith Jr. You don't really have any bigs other than Dirk Nowitzki, who was playing center a chunk last year. So I think you're going to see a situation where they're trying to get somebody to let one of the big guys fall to them. I think they're looking for some combination of either Marvin Bagley or Mo Bamba, where they pick at, I think, 5. Because you've got Phoenix, Sacramento, Atlanta, Memphis, then Dallas, yeah.
Okay.
Dallas is 5. It's always hard to keep track. Then Orlando 6, Bulls 7, Cleveland 8. But no, like I said, I don't trust them too far. In all fairness, I don't trust them any farther than I can throw them. But that's where we're at with that. And then, of course, I think I'm going to switch our gears over to UFC 225 tomorrow night with what started out to be allegedly 2 title fights, which I always considered 1 title fight and 1 paper title fight, where they're just trying to create some fake titles for TV ratings, which is really shameful because it's still been a great card without the fake interim title fight at 170. It didn't need to happen. Now you have Yoel Romero, who, guess what? Another UFC fight week, another person misses weight, and another championship fight derailed by a weight cut issue. Now, again, he missed by 0.2. But anyways, what I was getting at is the card was deep anyways. You're already getting the CM Punk Jackson fight, which people are going to tune in to see because they like CM Punk. And you kind of have this Mickey Gall loser match battle because they both are 0-1 in UFC and both got their asses tapped out by Mickey Gall in pretty fast order. You have Megan Anderson finally making her debut as the second real 145-pound fighter in UFC. So you might actually, if she can handle her business against Holly Holm, which is always a draw anyways after she KO'd Ronda Rousey. So if Megan Anderson can handle her business, then you're setting her up for a Chris Cyborg title fight at 145. And finally somebody who's actually really a 145 female fighter fighting Chris Cyborg. You know, Colby Covington, Rafael Dos Anjos fight was always going to be a good fight, whether it was for a fake belt or not. And then, again, Yoel Romero. This is his second straight title fight. He has missed weight, by the way. Like, you just have to kick him up to 185 now. Like, I think he's at 185. I kick him up to 205. You up to light heavyweight. Like, if you can't make the weight cut, and this is 2 title fights in a row, you failed to make the weight cut, you need to be done. And you know, UFC about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago now, moved to what they call the early weigh-ins. The thought process was, if you get the weight cuts done sooner, give the fighters more time to rehydrate, to eat, to be in better health for when they actually fight. And initially it worked out well. The fighters were making weight. But almost every fight this year, and I think almost every pay-per-view, you've had somebody miss weight.
Well, it was miss weight or somebody get hit with a drug suspension.
Well, I think every pay-per-view this year, I think you've had somebody miss weight. And
that's the thing. You had that.
I'm not even talking the drug suspensions. There haven't been as many drug suspensions as you think. I think you're thinking the wrong sport. But what I'm saying is there's clearly an issue with weight cutting, and most people have speculated what has happened is because they know they have more time to recover, that they aren't cutting as much weight to try and gain an advantage. So they're trying to cut it quick and then put it right back on by dehydrating instead of naturally cutting weight for the couple weeks up to the fight. So they're trying to come in heavier and then just cut a bunch of water weight, and then they're miscalculating how much water weight they can cut. And so, of course, Dana White's thought process is, well, we'll just move the weight cut, the weigh-in back to the late weigh-in so you don't get as much time to rehydrate. Even then, if you have watched some of these fights over the last 5 years with the way some of these guys have cut weight and shed water weight, and then you have guys who are fighting at 170 who are weighing 190 on fight day, a day and a half later, that's preposterous. Now, my thought process for fixing it, and I like it, is go to the NCAA wrestling weigh-in process and weight rules, and you'll stop this misweight shit right away. Weigh in 1 hour before the event starts. Not going to be able to cut weight like these guys do, where they're cutting 15 or 20 pounds of water weight. Because you can't use an IV to rehydrate, and you're not going to be able to rehydrate 15 to 20 pounds naturally in an hour without so perfecting your performance so badly where you just have 60 seconds or 90 seconds to knock somebody out. Otherwise, you're just going to be gassed from fatigue. That's one of my thoughts. And then there's also basically they do in NCAA, they actually do what they call a hydration test with you and weigh you in based off of what you weigh fully hydrated, and they actually take urine samples to test your level of hydration. And, within so what you weigh when you're fully hydrated, if you want to fight at a certain weight class, you can only lose X amount of percent of your body weight per week to get there. If your competition is in 4 weeks and you're trying to lose 8% of your body weight, not allowed. They won't even let you compete at that weight based off of your fully hydrated weight. And like I said, that's kind of my thought. To go to that. One of the fighting leagues though in Japan, One FC has switched their thing to be kind of a blend between the UFC weigh-in and the NCAA, where they do the walking around weight, basically. So you must submit their current walking weight and daily training weight regularly. They have an actual app. They have to log that in and track it. And you must put in your data weekly, but it must include daily weights. They'll be assigned to a weight class based on collected data and random weight checks, because they're going to do random checks, and you can't drop a weight class within 8 weeks from event. So whatever your weight class is what it is. During your fight week, your weights are checked daily. So they use urine-specific gravity, which is how they check the hydration levels. For anybody who wants to know what the test is, because I can say, hey, they do this hydration check, but so it's urine-specific gravity, and the day after your arrival for the event and 3 hours prior to the event. And you must be within their weight class and pass the specific gravity hydration test all week and up to 3 hours before the event. And if an athlete falls outside the weight or fails the test, they are disqualified from the event. Doctors may request additional testing at their discretion. Catch weight bouts are allowed. So say you fall outside your weight or you fail your test, you can have a catch weight bout, just like they have a lot of times now when people miss weight. But you still have to be within 105% of the lighter opponent's weight. So you can't massively outweigh somebody. Like if you tune into UFC, you see some guys who massively outweigh some of the other guys sometimes from the drastic weight cuts. Same thing happens in the women's too. Like Chris Cyborg, quote unquote, weighs 145, and then she looks 170 on fight day. And they put her up against somebody like Holly Holm, who probably walks around at 150 and cuts to 145. So it's like, really? then one will conduct random weight checks on athletes again. So the fighting organization will actually conduct the random weight checks, and you can petition to change weight classes outside of the 8-week competition. But again, they're going to do the hydration test. You can only cut so many percentage per week, and again, usage of IVs for personal hydration is not allowed. And basically, yeah. So at 4 weeks to fight, you can be within 1.5% over body weight. 5 weeks is 3%. So they clearly, this is how much you can go, and within 3 weeks to the event, up to the event, you have to be within weight. Like, I think that would work too. And ONE FC did that because they had a fighter die from cutting weight. And I think UFC's had some guys end up, in the hospital and things like that. Yeah, they've had some they've had fighters end up in the hospital.
So what you're just pretty much saying you want them to fight their actual weight size instead of, that's what you're looking for.
Correct. That's always what it was meant to be. Like, I can't say, with 100% certainty what drastic weight cuts did or didn't happen in like the highest levels of wrestling, but I wrestled in middle school. I've had a ton of friends who wrestled in high school. I wasn't that great, but what you would typically see at most is 2 to 3 pounds that people were trying to shed fight week.
I remember people running around inside trash bags trying to lose weight.
Right, you're shedding a little water weight, but it's 2 or 3 pounds. Right. You weren't trying to shed 20 friggin' pounds like some of these UFC guys are. And I get that there is an inherent advantage in fighting with being the bigger guy. It's clear. The whole purpose of weight classes was to take away that advantage of being the bigger guy. And you don't have this issue in wrestling where you see people miss weights all the time. You don't see it in boxing where people miss weight all the time. Because in boxing, because of the length of a match, where UFC is, for most fights, is 3 5-minute rounds. Right. A championship or main event is 5 minutes. You max out at 25. In boxing, you're talking 36.
Now,
and more intense 36, because, again, so many people in UFC have gone into the I'm here to win a fight, not I'm here to knock a motherfucker out or make him tap. There's a reason why Nate Diaz is still the bonus king and he ain't fought in 2 fucking years. Because the Diaz brothers were there to knock motherfuckers out or make them motherfuckers tap, and if they lost a fight, God forbid they lost a fight, they didn't give a shit. They weren't there to win on points and move up the rankings. They were there to fucking fight.
Now, when you made the reference to boxing, is there humongous dollar penalties for missing in boxing?
I mean, they've upped the dollar penalties in UFC now to 30% of the fight of your fight earnings for missing weight too. So they've kept upping in UFC. So yeah, you've had that. But again, in boxing, because speed is so important and being light on your feet and just endurance, you don't see the drastic weight cuts. And I don't know exactly what the boxing weigh-in rules are. I didn't research that. I should have.
I'm just using Mayweather last fight against McGregor. I thought it was 50% if McGregor missed it.
Well, that may have been specific
for him.
The thing with boxing is because the organizations aren't as strong as the fighters, those are so contract specific. Whereas obviously UFC has so much control where they get to dictate down kind of what the deal is to the fighters.
So it's a Dana White issue then.
Well,
I mean, he can solve it by doing half or something.
No, because you still have rules with the athletic commissions as well, in terms of like how the weigh-in rules are executed. So like the New York State Athletic Commission or the Las Vegas Athletic Commission, or in this case, the Illinois State Athletic Commission sets the rules for weigh-in. And they all agree to what they call the uniform mixed martial art rules, and they apply to all the mixed martial art rules, in the United States, basically.
Well, I get that, but
the penalty for missing weight would come from Dana White.
No, correct. I'm talking about Dana institutes some of the things that you were just saying. I mean, if you want to fight UFC, these are rules. Dana's still the biggest name.
But he would have to go to the athletic commission and say, these are the rules we want to do. So it's not like he could universally say today, but he's starting the process of going back to the old weigh-in rules where they move the weigh-in back. Just go to the ONE FC rules. Be done with it. You already work with USADA, so these guys have to have on their phone, on their app, their whereabouts, where they have to enter that information on there every day in case USADA wants to do a random doping. Have them enter their weight every day. If you're in training to fight, you're on a scale every day anyways.
Yeah.
Usually pre and post workout, just so you know, make sure you rehydrate properly, let alone anything more than that. So it's not an issue where they don't have the ability to do this. The technology makes it fairly simple. You know, like Dana White said, so many of the fighters now train out of the facility that the UFC has built down in Las Vegas and take advantage of the training, the doctors, all the stuff that the UFC has provided for them there in Vegas. And they're working on building a few more performance centers where it force the guys to come in once a month into every one of the performance centers and get weighed, you know, or again, Dana White himself hops on a private jet almost every week. Use that same jet to drop some of your guys off in random locations and based off the whereabouts from USADA and do weigh-ins.
Honestly, I've seen something where Dana White was talking about they have 80 training centers around the world, UFC training center. So as he said, I mean...
Well, but there's only one real performance center.
Okay.
There's a difference between the training centers and what the performance center is in Vegas. But that performance center is a whole nother level.
Well, yeah, but if he's got those training centers, you're close enough somewhere to them 80 where you can check in weight-wise if you have to do once a week. You're not that far from one of the training centers.
Right. Well, and again... the downside to letting people come in and choose when they train is they can cut weight. They can cut water weight the day before, right, and get down.
Yeah, but I'm going to say everybody knows when drug tests are going to happen.
Not true.
I mean, I know those are the random ones, but you know if you're fighting and you lose or win, you're going to get drug tested, and you still have a number of people failing those drug tests.
Again, I think you're overestimating the amount of people who fail a UFC drug test. So you have, I think the only real person who's failed in the last year is John Jones. And John Jones, I think, just is surrounded by terrible people in his training camp, to be fair. I think he just isn't aware of what he's putting into his body supplement wise and stuff like that, and his training people are putting stuff.
I thought the last one was a drug related one, wasn't it?
No. Cocaine was like 3 suspensions ago.
I thought this was okay.
2 suspensions ago. Other than that, you've had Chris Cyborg flag for something and then appeal it, and it kind of got whitewashed under the table.
Okay.
Again, known steroid user got caught surprised, and then the UFC had too much invested. They got it fixed. Other than that, you had Nick Diaz get popped for weed. Like, wow, you failed a urine test for weed? Oh, my God. Like, that stays forever. And again, not what I would call a performance enhancer, by the way. I mean, there's a loose argument that it helps with inflammation. And if you're doing it during your lead up to camp, that maybe you can train a little harder because you won't have to deal with inflammation in your joints. But again, isn't that kind of what you should want people taking anyways, as opposed to kind of trying to force themselves down the toward-all pipeline that is technically legal?
Yeah.
Like, it does the same thing, but one's way worse for you long-term. Like, so there's all kinds of issues when you get into drug testing in sports anyways.
Yeah.
Tests are always behind the cheaters. That's just reality. Et cetera, et cetera. But again, I think... And there was hope. Joe Rogan talked about it when Diaz and McGregor fought both times, because neither time did either of those guys cut weight. They fought at technically 170, I guess, but both weighed in at like 168, 167. Okay. So they're normal walking around weight, essentially. Because, if you're cutting to 170, you're going to come in at like 169, 170, not 168, 167, 166. So they, again, that was just walking around weight for those guys. And part of that was because the first time when they fought, Diaz had 10 days notice or 11 days notice. Mm-hmm. So you just can't ask somebody to do a weight cut on that little notice, because you just can't, not if you're going to do it halfway healthy.
Right.
He probably could have made it down to 155, but
it wouldn't have been a good match.
Yeah. And then what I mean, Rogan's whole point was like, look, these were two great fights for these guys. They both made a ton of money, and neither of them wasted much effort cutting any weight. Like, why would people continue to engage in this weight cutting practice when clearly the two biggest selling pay-per-views in UFC history involved the headliners who didn't cut a damn pound? Like, I get that there's technically a fighting advantage to being the bigger guy, but again, just be a better fighter.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't just wrestling. You have so many tools at your disposal. If you're a true through and blue quality mixed martial artist, you're going to have an opportunity. You're going to be okay. But that's just one man's humble opinion, and I'll continue to beat that drum as long and as hard as I can until people finally, somebody does something about it to where we keep not having a fight every week, missed, with somebody with missed weight. I mean, granted, this time it was only 0.2 of a pound. It wasn't the 3 pounds that Darren Till missed by, or the 8 that Mackenzie Dern missed by, or any of that. Wow. Yeah, 8 was terrible. That was atrocious. But, it is what it is. And I think we'll double back to the NBA to finish up, just because we're 22 points down with 8.5 minutes left. I think we're clearly seeing the Golden State Warriors sweep Cleveland here in the NBA Finals. So there's just not really much chance of this comeback happening. So it's going to bring me to 2 points that I want to talk about on this episode before we wrap it up, because we're already at 50-ish minutes. One, this debate about who the GOAT is. I'm just over it. I'm clearly going to always be in Camp Jordan, because that was who I watched play during, growing up to my teenage years, basically till I graduated high school. I got to grow up with Jordan being the guy, but there's just no way to settle these arguments. You can't cross-generationally compare people. And even though Jordan and LeBron are playing within 20 years of each other, the NBA rules have changed so much, and the game has changed so much, and sports medicine has changed so much, and sports science has changed so much. They're not playing the same game. It's not even close. So you can't compare these guys. LeBron's the greatest player of this generation. Jordan's the greatest player of his generation. Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell were the greatest two players in that generation. Trying to compare across generations and say this is clearly the greatest of all time just can't be done. It's an opinion piece anyways. There's no data-driven way to say, hey, this is the guy or this isn't the guy. Because if you're going to say Jordan's 6-0 in the finals, Bill Russell was 10-0. So is Bill Russell the GOAT then? Because he went 10-0 or 10-1 maybe? No. Again, he was a 7-foot dude playing center when everybody else was 6'5". Not impressed by what him or Wilt Chamberlain accomplished that much. So you're just going to be arguing in the wind. People are clearly going to pick one or the other, and that's just the way it is. I know not everybody's going to be happy with that answer. That seems like a facilitating, but it's I don't think LeBron's as great as Jordan. But I'm not hating on Jordan. I'm tired of the people who are so pro LeBron that it's hating on LeBron.
You can't say anything negative about James because
you're hating. It's no, he's the second greatest player to ever play the goddamn game of basketball. But he wasn't the defender Michael Jordan was. That's not debatable. One was 10-time all defensive, led the league in steals 3 times, was the MVP and defensive player in the same goddamn year. And led the league in scoring. It might have not been the MVP that year. I don't remember. Probably led the league in scoring, MVP, and defensive player of the year. The same goddamn year. LeBron will never be the defensive player of the year. In the crucial moments, he doesn't even check one of the 2 best players for the Warriors in these last 4 years.
Well, he's getting swept here. Come on.
Well, that's here or there. But the other argument you get is, well, he has no help. LeBron picked this roster. He dictated this roster, everything except for the Kyrie Irving trade, and that's just because he didn't necessarily dictate that, but he also didn't give Kyrie the chance to be the alpha that Kyrie wanted to be, so it kind of created a chasm in there And instead of finding a way to reach out and make it work, he kind of pushed him away.
Well, it makes Jordan a better GM, too.
But, I mean, here... I wouldn't go that far.
I'm not talking his GM days in Washington. I'm talking his GM days as Michael Jordan, the player.
I don't know.
He signed them 1-year deals on purpose to make sure he got what he wanted when he wanted.
Well, it's also really nice when you can get 1 year's $30 million when guys are just now getting $30 million for max contracts now. Which, again, he earned it and some then. Again, the man's worth $1.6 billion today. After paying out a multi-$100 million divorce settlement, he's done his business well. You can't argue with that side of it. But, you know, when J.R. Smith was a free agent, he's the one who went out to the front office and said, pay the man. So they paid him. When Tristan Thompson was playing out his restricted tender, he's the one who said, pay the man, and they paid the man. You know, he's the one who wanted Iman Shumpert on the roster, and they got him, and they extended him to keep him. He's the one who wanted Andrew Wiggins, a better wing defender, traded for Kevin Love, a post player they probably didn't need.
I know Tristan Thompson. I don't know the other guys, but Thompson was represented by his friend. What's the agent's name?
Thompson's. Yeah, it was represented by LeBron James' agent. Yeah,
yeah, but I'm not sure on James. But you know, getting those paid also got his guy paid too.
Maverick Carter. That's what you're thinking of. Yeah, all right, I understand. But that, again, this is his bed. He made it. He's lying in it.
Correct.
This isn't just some random collection. They came to him before they made all these trades this season to revamp the roster, and he said, yeah.
And it's a little too late now to tell me now you missed Dwayne Wade for not being on this team.
I get it. You should have kept one of Dwayne Wade or Derrick Rose. You needed a secondary playmaker. But again, you're also the one who didn't make Rodney Hood, who was scoring 16 points per game in Utah, feel like a piece of the team. And then come the playoffs, Tyronn Lue has no confidence in him because you're not letting him be a playmaker when he's on the court, which is what he did in Utah, is how he scored 16 points a game. He is a playmaker, and when you won't succeed that playmaking responsibility to other people, you're then taking them out of their game.
It's the reason Kyrie's in Boston. James needs the ball in his hands. I mean, he's not the greatest of shooters. He needs the ball to be effective. So does Rodney Hood. So he didn't fit. I mean, Kyrie didn't fit with him. With James, he needs the ball.
But he always talks about wanting a secondary playmaker. But then when they get him one, he doesn't take enough time off to let the guy be the secondary playmaker.
What he needs is.
He needs a coach.
Curry.
He needs a coach strong enough to tell him, no, you're sitting down, not checking in, and this guy is taking the ball for a while. He doesn't have that here. He handpicked Tyronn Lue to be his coach because he kept complaining about David Blatt not letting LeBron run the team.
Right.
Well, he got what he wanted, and again, he doesn't want it now. He doesn't want to take responsibility for that. At some point, no, LeBron, you get all the credit for being the player who put the power back in the players' hands, and you became the guy who created the big three and yada, 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 and everything else. But then when things don't go the way you think they should, you don't want to take any of the responsibility? No. You made your bed. You lied in it. Big deal.
True. I mean, let's just make it 3-6 in the NBA Finals now?
Makes 3-6. It's not a good look, that's for sure. No. I mean, 8 in a row is impressive. Not taking it away. And again, I'm even going to be more generous. I'm still going to leave him at 3-3 in the finals. I'm not counting the first one where he took that god-awful, Cleveland roster in 2008.
That's one.
And I'm not counting these last two with Kevin Durant jumping onto a 73-9 roster team that had already won a championship. Clearly, when you add the second best player in the NBA to a 73-9 roster, championship roster, they should continue to win championships going forward, minus major injuries or something like that, which just hasn't happened. So I will say, for 3 of those, he was at a talent deficit. Maybe if you want to say the one last year they had a chance because they did, and you want to give him the one where Matthew Dellavedova was playing key minutes, and what's the center that was in L.A., that then they traded to the Nets? Timothy Mozgov.
Oh, okay.
So again, you can pick any of them. I'm going to say 3-3. But if you want to tell me that
here it comes.
The time. No, I'm not going there yet.
Oh.
That the time that they lost to the Spurs, after they should have lost the year before to the Spurs, that they didn't at least have the two best players on the court then, you're lying to me and you're lying to yourself. Yep. If you're going to tell me in 2011 they didn't have 3 out of the 4 best players on the court, and the Kang, some of you calling him the GOAT, put up an 8, 9, and 7 line in the motherfucking NBA Finals being guarded by motherfucking JJ Barea. 5'11", 145 fucking pounds, wearing a Flavor Flav chain and clock. JJ Barea checks the GOAT to 8, 9, and 7.
Jason actually likes JJ Barea as a player.
I do. But if you're the king, if you're the GOAT, if you're the most physically impressive, dominant player we've ever seen in the league, somebody 5'10", 140 pounds should not check you to 8, 9, and 7.
Develop a post game.
Period. End of discussion. And as for the argument that this or any team LeBron's ever taken to the finals is the worst team led to the NBA Finals by a player, you're wrong. You're just wrong. Go back and check out that 2001 Philadelphia 76ers roster that Allen Iverson led to the NBA Finals, and tell me that ain't the worst fucking roster dragged to an NBA Finals in the history. You're talking about a team that has Eric Snow at point guard. Eric Snow. Dikembe Mutombo.
Old Dikembe Mutombo.
Very old Dikembe Mutombo. That's that roster. Aaron McKee. Aaron McKee was the other wing player. Eric Snow, Allen Iverson, Eric McKee. Nobody was over 6'3" in those 3 players. That's your 3. Mutombo, I don't even remember the rest of that roster. It was garbage. And they beat Shaq and Kobe game 1, by the way, of that finals. Allen Iverson played probably the greatest NBA final game in the history of the NBA Finals in that first game.
Mm-hmm.
So sorry, he's not dragged the worst roster to the NBA Finals. Period. End of discussion. And he hasn't even put up the most impressive feat. Michael Jordan won a championship with Scottie Pippen averaging 19 points per game and nobody else averaging over 8. And he won a championship with that roster. So sorry. This argument about weak rosters, I'm over it. Just understand, he's clearly the greatest player of his generation. He's one of the top 5 of all time. And that's really all you should have to say. At the point you're picking your top 5, you're splitting hairs. Anyways. So let's just stop the GOAT discussion. There is no singular greatest of all time. It's just not a discussion you're capable of having. It's the same as when people try to argue Tom Brady and Joe Montana in football. Like, are you forgetting about guys like Walter Payton and Jerry Rice? How come they don't get in that discussion of
they're not quarterbacks?
GOAT? Exactly. But couldn't they be the greatest football player of all time? Walter Payton was more complete than anybody.
Right.
Ran for touchdowns, received touchdowns, threw touchdowns, blocked, et cetera, et cetera. So, it is what it is. But
Cleveland just waved the white flag, took James out of the game.
23-7. 23-7 was his stat line so far. Let's see what his full stat line is. I'll pull it up real quick before we...
He might have fouled out.
I don't think he did. I think they just
pulled him.
Yeah. You let him get his applause break and...
Possible final wave to the crowd before he goes somewhere else.
Yeah. 23, 7, and 8. 7 for 13. It's not a terrible stat line. I mean, Kevin Love's at 13 and 9.
He needed to take more than 13 shots.
I mean, that's a here or there discussion, but I mean, Kevin Love's 13 and 9. He's only played 28 minutes tonight. So again, he would have put up his 4th straight 20 and 10 game if they'd have played him more.
Mm-hmm.
Now, LeBron had 5, so they pulled him. Kevin Love only had 2 personal fouls, and they still didn't play him more than 28 minutes.
He just doesn't match up. Well, I mean, who's he going to match up with?
Who, Kevin Love?
Yeah, on the court.
Draymond Green. Plus, for anything you want to say about anything that he's done over the last few finals, including the one they won, the Cleveland one, he's done a fine job when he's got switched on to Steph Curry guarding him. He's done a better job than almost any player else on the Cavs roster guarding Stephen Curry.
I get it. You say he guards Draymond Green. Then who's Tristan Thompson? Because they both in the game at the same time most of the game. I mean, you can't have both of them in there if they don't go that big. You can't go big because you can't match.
Then you take Tristan Thompson off. Tristan Thompson doesn't put up the numbers Kevin Love does.
Well, I agree, but
doesn't space the floor. Doesn't
whatever reason he decided to go the other way. I mean,
yeah. But again, I'm over the whole discussion. I'm over the weakness of the roster argument. You can't pass Ghost. That's the thing. You can't pass Ghost unless you do just otherworldly things. And he's not doing otherworldly things. That's the problem. His career numbers compare really similarly to Larry Bird's up until Larry Bird injured his back repaving his mom's driveway in French Lick, Indiana, because that's what guys did back then in the off season. Like, they weren't working out with a nutritionist and a sports medicine guy and a trainer and no, they were repaving driveways. That's what they were doing.
Hey, you always got the image of Jordan sitting there drinking and smoking in the locker room. So,
but he was one of the first guys to work with a trainer in the off season. But again, you didn't have the science behind it you do now, where you can be like, okay, you want to do this, work on these muscles and this. And that's again, you're chasing ghosts. You're not going to catch them. It's an opinion argument anyways. Everybody's going to have their opinion. Some of you are just wrong. It's okay. But people try to say opinions can't be wrong. They're wrong. Opinions can very much be wrong. Like, it just is what it is. But
just put the list of who James kept from getting a title versus the list that Jordan gave to the title. I mean, you see who.
Hang on. Let's see. Who is the best player that hasn't won a title in the LeBron James era? I guess the best you could say that technically he's kind of stopped, I guess, would be Russell Westbrook.
Yeah.
And I guess the Warriors have at least as much to do with that as he does. Mm-hmm. And, Kevin Durant just completely bitching out in 2016 when they had a 3-1 lead and just didn't shoot against the Warriors for the next 3 games and then goes and joins them. Still going to be a total bitch move, particularly for a guy who once tweeted, oh, I guess what? Everybody's just creating super teams now in 2010, trying to call LeBron and company, and then did the same goddamn thing. Don't think I forgot about you, motherfucker. I remember Kevin Durant. Don't think I forgot about you. You still a bitch move, motherfucker.
Pepper's Farms remembers.
I remember. I don't need Petrus Farm to remember. I remember when you tried to call motherfuckers for creating super teams, and you went and did the same goddamn thing. Sorry. I remember. But, yeah, maybe Westbrook, maybe James Harden. But, again, that was all one team, and then James Harden was gone the next year.
Yep.
I think you give Sam Presti and a cheap Oklahoma City owner as much credit for that. Should have kept that team together, because then the salary cap jumped up 2 years later. You'd never had to pay the repeater tax anyways. It was a bad luck for what Oklahoma City should have been and what they ended up being. Right. But again, that's maybe the best you have. Whereas Jordan kept Stockton, Malone, Peyton, Kemp, Barkley,
Miller,
Reggie Miller, Patrick Ewing. Alonzo Mourning got his after Jordan retired, I guess.
Yeah.
Larry Johnson never won one. John Starks. You could go on and on and on. That's kind of what it looks like.
And Clyde Drexler and Akeem Olajuwon send Jordan thank you cards every year
for his gambling suspension. I mean, for his baseball retirement. His retirement to go play baseball, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it is what it is. But yeah, so I mean, there's definitely clear. But like I said, these are split hairs arguments when you're talking Jordan to LeBron to Magic to Kareem to Bill Russell to Wilt Chamberlain to Kobe Bryant to a peak Shaquille O'Neal.
Hey, just remember, Kobe Bryant wants to be brought in that conversation too. He told LeBron James, "Get to my level, then you can get to Michael."
Yeah, okay.
That's what he told him.
I know he blew by you. Kobe, you never won a championship without an all-star center. I'm just going to point this out. Shaquille O'Neal won all 3 finals MVPs when you were there, and then you kind of fell off when you kind of forced Shaq out, and then you didn't do shit again until you had Paul Gasol. So again, and Andrew Bynum. technically, for those runs. So
I forgot Andrew Bryan was the center then.
And he was good then before he
was good to get his paycheck.
And he hurt he had a knee injury and he went crazy, hand in hand. But I don't necessarily think the paycheck was. I think he had enough discipline in L.A. And then again, as soon as he was traded, he got hurt right away, and it just all spiraled from there. But again, not the point. You're splitting hairs with these guys. You're not clearly running a win away with any of them. There's always a reason to say one's better than the other, or vice versa. And realistically, as time goes on, it'll expand from the top 5 to 7 to the top 10. You're not going to insult somebody. You're not hating on somebody when you say they're 2 or 3 or 7 and not 1. You're just making your arguments for why you think they're behind the other guy.
There's going to be somebody else coming up that's going to challenge James. You don't know who it is yet, but
Kevin Durant, whether you like his bitch move or not, wins 5 championships in a row. Where do you put him at all of a sudden? I think this is going to be Curry getting this Finals MVP, so that'll be a little different than last year, where he did at least get the Finals MVP. But you joined a team that had probably 2 of the 2 best shooters in the history of the NBA on there. As much as I love my man Jesus Shuttlesworth, he's the only one who might put Klay Thompson down to 3. Steph Curry is clearly the greatest shooter the NBA's ever seen. Klay Thompson's 2 or 3, depending on how you want to split that hair. I guess I would put him at 3 because he doesn't have an NBA final saving, falling out of bounds, back-footed 3-pointer like Ray Allen does. But he's close.
Man, not giving any love to Reggie.
Again, Reggie's 5.
Oh, you didn't bring his name up in that conversation.
I didn't bring up Larry Bird either, who I'd put ahead of Reggie Miller technically, but and again, this is not accounting for the guys who might have been great shooters we don't know because they weren't a 3-point line back in the day. How do you judge those guys in that standard? You can't. So that's my point. You can't judge a standard that's constantly changing, and the rules are changing, and again, the analytics have changed the game too. Jordan didn't shoot much from 3, or didn't, his 3-point percentage is low. LeBron's 3-point percentage is low too. But he shoots more because the analytics tell you the game's played that way. But before you develop
the 3-point shot, if that was the case, if he was playing now,
you can't compare goes.
Right.
You can't make either one of these guys play by different rule sets. It's just the reality of it. Sorry. So it is what it is. LeBron's the greatest of his generation, and et cetera, et cetera. And there goes LeBron walking off court and shaking hands, and maybe he'll actually shake hands with the Warriors. I kind of hope he doesn't. He's not. Good for you.
Maybe he'll shake hands with Dan Gilbert.
I don't know who he shook hands with there, but who cares? He's allowed to do what he wants to do.
I don't know. I've heard Isaiah talk about this here just not too far ago about when they didn't shake hands with the Bulls. Why?
Yeah.
I'm not happy you beat me.
Right.
Congratulations.
We're not friends. Fuck you. So again, I guess that's where I fall at on this concept of the GOAT. You can't definitively pick one in any sport. In baseball, you can pick a pitcher, you can pick a batter. If you pick a batter, you picking somebody who's just a great hitter, you picking somebody who's the best hitter and fielder combination.
I don't know. I think you got a hard time. You got to match somebody that can do Babe Ruth. Pitch, hit, run, eat.
Didn't play against anybody but white guys. Yeah, so again, you're comparing ghosts because they didn't make the rules. These are the things here. They didn't make the rules. They didn't set anything up, But there's always that argument now. People are like, well, you did play against black guys. Babe Ruth didn't say, well, don't let me play against black guys. Those were the rules made by the people cutting his check. Trust me. Maybe he did think that way. I don't know. I never met Babe Ruth. I never talked to him. He died 60, 70 years before I was, well, maybe not 60 or 70, 40 years before, 50 years before I was born. Now, you can't have GOAT arguments. You just can't definitively say somebody's the greatest of all time. Most people are going to skew towards who was the best during their teenage years. That's usually the way people are going to go. The teenage and early 20 years, whoever was great then was their greatest of all time.
If you say the greatest of all time, there's only one name that pops in my head.
Again, in basketball. But again, that's...
I'm not talking basketball. Muhammad.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the name that pops in. I mean, he might have given it to himself, but
I say, but if you're talking, in my opinion, the greatest heavyweight fighter for at least a short period of time, Mike Tyson. Yeah. Mike Tyson was a way better offensive fighter than Muhammad Ali ever was, and he was just as good defensively, and he had people way more afraid of him. Unfortunately, the first time he had adversity with that Buster Douglas fight, where I still think he knocked Buster Douglas out, by the way, ref slow counted that 10 and didn't knock him out here or there, then he immediately gets arrested for raping somebody who invited him into their hotel room at 2 a.m. and then spends the next 4 or 5 years in prison. And altered his career in a way we'll never be able to understand. By the time that he fights, Lennox Lewis and what's the guy with 900 kids?
Foreman?
That he bit his ear?
Oh,
Holyfield. By then, he was not the same guy. He was surrounded by way different trainers and it just wasn't the same scenario. So, that's hard to say what could have been or, with him. So I try to look at things like that where you look at such a small window, but for that window, he was the greatest that you could ever imagine. There's always going to be the people who say Jack Nicklaus is the greatest golfer of all time because he's still got 18 majors, Tiger's 14. For that run where Tiger won those 14, that window, Jack Nicklaus couldn't have had a candle to him. And you can do this for every sport where you could say for the entirety of a career, maybe something came along where serious injuries or prison sentence or something where you start to look at small windows of not even small windows, again, 4 or 5 years of just extended greatness that were ridiculous, where people showed up and couldn't fathom what was going to happen. Right. For 6 seasons, full seasons Jordan played, basically you started the year knowing who was going to win the championship at the end of the year.
You were playing for second in the West.
And the West was good. It's not like now where the West is good and the East is garbage. Mm-hmm. East was good. The West was good. So it's not an issue where there was a lack of quality of talent or lack of teams. Again, he faced a Trailblazers team led by Clyde Drexler. Mm-hmm. He faced a Lakers team with Magic and James Worthy still.
Right.
He faced a Phoenix Suns team with Kevin Johnson, Dan Marley, Charles Barkley.
Yep.
He faced Seattle team with Gary Payton and Sean Kemp and Detlef Schrempf. And then he faced Stockton, Malone, Hornacek, Byron Russell, and 2 more finals. He wasn't playing teams that didn't have talent or weren't good teams. He was just a different cat. He was a certified killer.
He didn't play Dallas Mavericks teams that had Dirk Nowitzki and
the 900-year-old Jason Kidd and Tyson Chandler and JJ Barea. And
I'm still only hearing 1.5 Hall of Famers at that point.
I mean, 2.
I know Jason Kidd was a Hall of Famer,
but he was half of a player by then, yeah. He definitely wasn't peak Jason Kidd at that point. I can't even think of who else they had on their roster at that point. Michael Finley was retired.
Maybe Brandon Haywood?
If he wasn't playing much, trust me. I'd have to look up the whole roster, but let's not get into that. The whole concept is it's really hard, if you're talking, are you talking the greatest for a stretch? Are you talking for greatest for a season? Talking the greatest for their entire career? Then you're starting to compare eras and ghosts, and these get to be really difficult things to do, and it's really impossible to ever definitively say this person's the greatest in this sport. Mm-hmm. Again, Jordan kind of was different because he was so great on both sides of the ball. So he took away some of that. Well, you can't make the one-way player argument. Because again, in football, almost every time GOAT comes down to quarterback, but even when I make my other cases, then I bring up guys like Walter Payton and Jerry Rice. Well, what about defensive players like Deion Sanders, who shut down a portion of the field, or Rod Woodson, who shut down portions of the field, or Lawrence Taylor, who was cracked out of his mind and was still the nastiest rusher.
Reggie White.
Dick Butkus, Mike Singletary, Jack Ham, Joe Green. Like, you go on and on for players who get overlooked because they don't play quarterback. Right? Well, guess what? It might be the most important position, but doesn't necessarily make you the greatest football player of all time. Most quarterbacks are very one-dimensional players, to be fair. Whereas at least a lot of guys who played wide receiver or defensive back or linebacker a lot of times will end up playing special teams, particularly in the older era of football. Mm-hmm. So there was always that. But still, again, the concept is really hard to say who's going to be the greatest of all time.
You need to stop stealing ESPN's next 3 weeks worth of conversation, though. If you take that conversation away, they got nothing to talk about.
No, they're not going to talk about that. I mean, they will a little bit, but now it's going to be where's LeBron going? Where's he going to play next? And who's all going to sign with the Warriors this offseason to latch on and win a ring? And does Klay Thompson sign his Supermax extension, or does he wait another year and try to get more money, or does he take another year and then maybe go somewhere else because, he doesn't want to be part of a super team anymore? Like, none of these guys in Golden State are going anywhere. I think they all love playing share and share like basketball. I think it's a combination of the right guys and, again, anytime you can add the second best player in the NBA to a roster that's already won a championship, it's just ridiculous.
Which means none of the four are going anywhere. They got a couple of people that could David West, Iguodala
still got, I think he's got 2 more years on the extension.
He could retire.
He could. I don't see him with all the money he's got left coming.
Well, yeah.
David West might retire, but again, how much did David West even play in this finals? Plus, you have Jordan Bell, who, again, the rebuilding Bulls traded
for $3 million ban.
3.5.
Oh, sorry.
3.5. Don't forget that 0.5. Because, we might need that equity for some other transaction in the future. Was John Paxson and Gar Forman's rationale. Like, you don't trade a young piece. Particularly on what essentially equates to a non-guaranteed contract those second-rounders get. So, see, kind of coming full circle again, even though we took a small break in the middle for UFC, that back to how much I hate Gar Pax. I just do. I really, really do. Before we go any longer, I think we're at an hour 20. I feel like that's a good place to call it for today. And who knows, maybe we'll do one in another day or two after the UFC fights and stuff like that, just to have them get on a regular rhythm. But maybe I'll start just do one once a week and release it on Friday night, Saturday mornings. I'll be really different. Release them on a day when nobody downloads podcasts. So thanks for joining in, Todd.
No problem.
Even if you didn't say a whole lot, you did exactly what I needed. You gave me my breaks when I needed a break and gave me somebody to bounce stuff off. Because when I do these by myself, there just gets to be this point where I brain lock. And you kept the conversation moving like a good second mic should.
Except when you talked UFC, because I was very knowledgeable about that one.
Not your cup of tea, but we're going to drag you out to the UFC fights tomorrow, and you'll get better at it as time goes by. I mean, I don't proclaim to be a UFC master by any stretch of the imagination, but I know it well enough. So, again, subscribe, rate, review, iTunes, Google Play Music, Podbean app, lots of places where you get podcasts. Subscribe, rate, review. It always ends up on my YouTube channel. So you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, or Snapchat. All four are JSONBANICKI. Like the fan page for Don't Worry, Nobody Listening podcast on Facebook. Tell your mama, tell your friends, tell everybody. Hell, I don't care if you just download and delete it. Get me more listens so I can make some money doing this shit. Peace out.